Turned by McKenna! Lovely cushion header. And Gerrard! What a head, son! What a head!
Hello and welcome back to the Premier League Trio podcast. My name is Hayder Rabbani and I am your host as usual today. I'm joined again for the third time and I'm really excited to be joined by Tom Mcdermott. How are you doing today, mate?
Good afternoon, good evening. Are you okay?
Yeah, all good. Enjoying the sun. I'm not working at the moment. I kind of lost my job the other day, but
Sorry to hear that.
That's all right. So I'm just making the most of it and just enjoying it till September and see what comes up. How about you?
Yeah, plodding along with numerous little projects really, but I want to know where you are where the sun is, because up north it's not quite as bright as that. We get a bit of sun poking through the clouds, but normally it's spoilt by a heavy downpour after. So where are you?
Really? I'm just outside Reading, so yeah, not too far from London, about 30 miles from London. We've had a beautiful day, honestly. It's been sunny all day, and then tomorrow they say it's gonna be 36. So let's have a look. But yeah, it's sweltering down here.
Wow. Well, take some something for us up here and spare a thought for us.
Yeah, will do. All right, let's just jump straight into it, Tom. And obviously, it's the transfer window is open now, and it's just a little bit of silly season. To be honest, I'm already sick of it. And the most obvious place to start, and I'm sure you're sick of his name too, is Jadon Sancho. And I just want to ask you, what do you make of this saga? Because obviously, we've been seeing conflicting reports earlier in the week. We're sort of having a British media versus outside of the UK in terms of what's been said, and what we saw earlier on in the week is that United were close to striking a deal with Dortmund for around 120 million euros. I don't think that's been disputed, the actual price, but I think the sticking point is obviously the structure of the deal in terms of the upfront payment, the performance-based add-ons, etc., reaching that 120 million euro mark. So it seems like a real game of poker to me, but what have you heard, and where do you sort of stand on all this? Do you think that United should be going and spending this money on just one player, or do you think that it's completely out of our reach in terms of our price budget?
I think all the noises were coming from Germany initially. I think the Bild and some of the other sort of respected journalists, not just German ones, but ones that are connected to Dortmund, put out via Twitter a lot of information, and my understanding is that I spoke to United the day after and they said that it's been over-egged. There's still a lot of work to do. Things will need to change from Dortmund's side in one or two areas, and that while Sancho probably knows through agents what wage is on offer and he knows what he'd accept, a wage specifically hasn't been agreed either. So there are still things to sort out. I don't think wages would be a problem at the end of the day when it gets to that point, but at the moment there's a fee. And I remember speaking to my same contact at United just when the coronavirus actually in the early stages of it, and it was when United's financial figures were first announced, and he was quite clear in what he said to me in the sense that United wouldn't be spending vast amounts of money because of the pandemic this window, and that's why I think you're getting a quibble over what the initial payment would be. Somebody, I think, quoted, it was 60 or 70 million first of payment, and then 30 after that, and then I don't know 20 after that or whatever it is. But there's no way United are going to pay, I don't think, 60 or 70 million as an initial payment. That's the information I've got. So the total fee might be around what Dortmund want, although I'm not convinced it will be as high as 120. But the payment and the structure and how that's delivered to Dortmund is a concern as well. So I think the overall fee, there might be a bit of movement on that. Slightly less, I think United are hoping for, especially in the current market. And then the way it's paid and structured. Now, in terms of his wages, no doubt, United have said to Sancho's people via agents or whatever and said, this is the kind of wage you can give him. But I don't think a specific wage, regardless of what's been said, has been agreed. I don't think it'll take long to sort out, but I don't think they've given him a firm wage. So this is what you're getting, these are your bonuses. I think there's a lot of things to iron out. So while that side of things will probably be easy to do, the rest of it and agreeing with his club and going through all that will take a little while, I think. And do I think it'll be done? I think there's a willingness from United. I think United felt that it had to brief the other night on Twitter when several sort of places came out with the same story, because I think they felt that the word from Germany was that, you know, it was kind of moving along and they expected a deal to be done, whereas United were kind of saying, hang on a second, we're not quite there yet. So work to be done. Do I think it'll be done? I think it probably will be done. But I think for the first time, United have been giving consideration over the last few years over the last few weeks rather and days even, about moving on and potentially pursuing other players if you know, Dortmund refuse to their stance. You know, they refuse to soften slightly.
I completely understand why Dortmund don't want to sell. I mean, if you're having a look at it, they don't have a need really to sell in terms of financial point of view. And, you know, a lot of people are saying he's not worth that fee, but it's not for us to decide, is it? It's what Dortmund believe he's worth. So is there a willingness from Jadon Sancho to force a move as well? Because you're seeing a lot where it seemed to me that it hinged on us getting Champions League. And to be honest, I wasn't really convinced about that, because I think there clearly is a willingness for him to move. And I think with Alexis Sanchez now leaving, with that number 7 shirt now available, I think that's a massive incentive for him to also push his, and I hate this word, but his brand out there and improve his, I guess, marketing. So is there a willingness from Sancho? Does he want to move to Man United, and would he force a move if Dortmund categorically said no, or is he happy to stay another season?
Well, first of all, I think that Jadon Sancho was pretty keen to leave Manchester City because he wanted first team football. So while I don't think he was awkward, I think he made it quite clear he wanted to leave there because his desire was to play first team football. I'd be very surprised if he did a similar thing at Dortmund. First of all, he's playing first team football, but they've been very good to him. He's on a very good wage there. They've provided this initial platform to sort of announce himself to the world, if you like. He was very well known, or he was seen as one of the bright prospects in the UK. But, you know, the platform in the Bundesliga with Dortmund playing Champions League football, scoring goals and making assists, I think he's grateful for that. So I don't think he will make things difficult for Dortmund. That I'd be very, very surprised if that happened, actually. But yes, there is a willingness from the player. The player would like to join Manchester United. And Manchester United at the moment are the only team in for him, and unless that changes, that's probably where he will be heading.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think Dortmund have been phenomenal, and you can see why the likes of Jude Bellingham, Haaland have also gone over there, because it's a real great platform for young, talented players to grow and play, like you said, Champions League football, first team football. But
you get
also,
the opportunity, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I had not that I'd have ill feeling, but a lot of United fans are, you know, upset that Bellingham chose Dortmund over United. But I think for his career, it's probably the best thing. But sort of moving on a little bit to, I guess, the significance of this summer. The way I see it is that it's United's most important summer in years. We're looking at us, you know, sort of finishing in a positive trajectory. I'd say third place. If you said that to me at the beginning of the season, I would have ripped your hand off, to be honest. I did not think it'd be possible. So it's been pretty impressive from Ollie and the team to pull it back from it. Was almost, you know, a season to forget. But how many signings do you expect us to make this summer, and what represents a strong window? Because when I'm looking at this Sancho deal, I'm just seeing a lot of PR flying around. And to be honest with you, it really seems to me that Ed Woodward is building this up so that when he eventually does clinch the deal, it's going to be like a fanfare, you know, the sort of, you know, massaging his ego and, you know, the sort of stuff that we see consistently from Ed Woodward in the media when he does come out with ludicrous statements like Man United can do what others can't. To me, it honestly seems like he wants to be the hero when we clinch it. So do you expect him to make more than just the Sancho signing? And what else do we need? I think it's quite obvious from seeing the other night what we do need.
Yeah, I don't think Ed Woodward is honestly as calculated as that from a PR point of view. I think he's made mistakes. I think they're clear, and he has also been responsible for getting a lot of players through the door. Now, the success isn't down to Woodward. Falcao, Di Maria, Schweinsteiger, through to the Wan-Bissakas, Maguire, Bruno. You know, it's him and Matt Judge who sort of look at the players and decide which ones they're going to get. Once Solskjaer identifies them, and there's a whole network and an attribute system and computerized system they use. So Woodward does get a lot of stick. Some of it's probably, he probably deserves it to a certain extent, but there's a lot of stuff as well. And I don't think in this instance that he's trying to delay things for a PR purpose. I've heard people say at the beginning of the week he's waiting for the 7th of August so that he can unveil the number 7. I don't think he goes down to that one. I think that if Manchester United do a deal and can sign Jadon Sancho, you might get a day or two where they've probably got in their mind what they want to do already. If a particular type of player comes in, who's that age, with that background, with that number on his back, they probably know. So I don't think I don't necessarily agree with that he's trying to delay it or anything. I think he's doing, from the business side of point of view, he's trying to do what's best for Manchester United in terms of, money, finances, and a lot of supporters don't like that. I hear people all the time, I read people all the time say, well, it's not our money, just spend it. Well, that doesn't mean that they're going to go and spend the money. Manchester United, sadly, is a business. And, you only have to read Van Gaal's comments about after he left about how it was run and all the sort of off-field commitments and, everything that goes with being part of the Manchester United family, so to speak. So Woodward, and we must say it brings in a lot of money. Now, we can argue all day if they spend enough and how they spend it, but from Woodward's point of view, I don't think he's trying to delay it for PR purposes or to be the hero. I think that on paper, whether the signings have been successful or not, he's got a lot through the door, really. Does he sign the players? We should, enough players sometimes. Perhaps not. Perhaps he says no more often than we realise as well. But in terms of this deal, I think it'll get done when it's done. I think that United are doing it for financial reasons in terms of they want to get the best deal for themselves. They obviously feel that Sancho's worth something different than what Dortmund believe he is. And it's going to take a bit of toing and throwing, and there'll come a point where either United will agree to pay it, the structure will work for them, or it won't, and they'll go and pursue somebody else. But to suggest that it's as near as it was a few days ago, I was told was wide of a mark, and it's obviously been proven so because it doesn't look like he's going to sign this evening, and it certainly doesn't like he's going to sign on the 7th, which is Friday the 7th. So we'll have to see on that. From a sort of PR point of view, you saw with the Pogba deal, didn't you, with Stormzy and things like that. I'm sure they've got something up their sleeve. Alexis Sanchez, another deal that Woodward got over the line. You're with the piano on Old Trafford and things like that. So I'm sure with the number 7 now vacant because Alexis Sanchez is gone, I'm sure that they'll have something up their sleeve, and I'm sure that they'll have that all planned. But in terms of other players to buy, I think I'm not sure that they've paid all of the Maguire and Fernandes fee off either. I think one or both of those deals were structured in a way where they put an initial payment down and then followed it up with other payments. So I'm not sure that United will be out there buying a lot of players. Maybe one more, maybe a Jack Grealish perhaps alongside Sancho. But I think that we saw the other night that United, once you take the best 11, sort of put it to one side, the supporting cast aren't good enough, and you look at teams like City and Liverpool, and that's why over the course of a season you're going to need a squad because you can't play Salah, Firmino and Mane every week. You need to bring Origi in and Shaqiri, and I always look at that last year. Who scored one of the vital goals in the semi-final against Barca? I think it was Origi, and then who scored the second goal? I think in the Champions League final for Liverpool, and it was Origi. And at the moment, I don't think United have got that kind of quality from the bench where you can get somebody who can come on and make a real big impact. And that's why it's interesting if Sancho arrives, because if Sancho does arrive and he's playing 3 up front as he normally does, then either Martial, Greenwood, or Rashford are going to have to sit out for Sancho. So that's when the extra bit of quality will come in. So, to answer your question, in terms of other players, I think maybe one more signing. It wouldn't surprise me if that is Grealish later on in the window. I know United were interested in him in January and made it known that they were interested in January. I think the player knows that United are interested, but I think that also City were interested as well, and their interest cooled. But I don't know if they, obviously now with Sané, David Silva moving on as well, Sané leaving, whether they feel they need another midfielder, because obviously Torres has come in as well. So it might be down to United again, and you might see a similar sort of cat and mouse game. But for Manchester United to go out and pay 100 million on another player straight after Jadon Sancho, certainly won't happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. You're looking at sort of the Jack Grealish situation. It's very clear that we should not be going and spending 80 million on him. And I agree, it'll be a to and fro.
How much is Bruno Fernandes? So when all that
47
comes in,
million.
is it sort of, if he wins Ballon d'Or twice or something, does it go up to 58 million or something ridiculous? So there's, there's so let's say it's all in between sort of 55 and 60 million, and that's if he's won the league for us, the Champions League, and won the Ballon d'Or. Now, this is where British prices become a tad, confusing, because you look at Harry Maguire, who's never, I know it's a different position, I know he's a defender, but you look at a guy there who's never played a game of Champions League football, had a relatively good World Cup, did okay for England at the World Cup, and has played for Leicester, but since then hasn't, really played well. And he's an £80 million player, but yet you can get Bruno for, whatever it was. I mean, I look at the Grealish sort of potential signing, and I wonder why United haven't gone for somebody like Thiago, because I know he's 29. Liverpool are obviously rumoured to be going for him, but actually, if you want a quality midfielder who would add depth to that squad,
and who's world class,
he's world class player. And if you're talking 25 million or the 60, 70 million that are saying they want for Grealish, then to me, if we're looking from a business point of view as well, because whether fans like it or not, it is a business. It makes perfect sense for, and if you come out with Jadon Sancho, I mean, look, if Jadon Sancho, an initial payment's gone down for him for, say, 50, 60 million, Ake's just gone to Man City for, was it 40, 45?
40,
you could have had Sancho's first payment, Nathan Ake and Thiago for under 100 million in one summer.
Yeah. Well, that's where I wanted to go on to next. And you look at City wrapping up 2 deals very quickly, arguably 2 excellent players as well, for around 60 million. Like you mentioned, Ferran Torres, he looks a real talent at only 20 years old. It's very promising signing. I know he was in the last year of his deal, so that's why.
And how much did they put? Yeah, but still,
20 million.
I don't want to suggest that City were doing this, but for it to go to his last year and then for them to pay that amount, City were probably, let's not pretend he doesn't go on. Perhaps even talking to the player and making sure that he sat in that, So it's all about being a bit clever in the market and working.
But for me, that's a Pep Guardiola. That's a Pep Guardiola pull for sure. Because you look at Torres, he probably could have signed for Barcelona or Real Madrid. He's that highly rated. It'll take him a bit of a while to settle, I think, because he's still a young player and coming to the Premier League. But if Guardiola wasn't manager of Man City, would they have signed him? Probably not. And I guess that's kind of the worry, isn't it? That although Ollie's done very well and he has got an element of a pull, but we still don't have that managerial pull that we can. I mean, look, everyone wants to go and play for Liverpool. Let's be honest, right now they're probably the best side in Europe. I'd still say they are, even though they're out of the Champions League. And
they want to play for the manager, don't they? That's what.
Yeah, they do.
People want to play for Pep Guardiola because he wins domestic titles and he's won the Champions League. And people want to play for Jurgen Klopp because he makes them feel good. It's a new way of managing, and they play nice football. He lets people express themselves, and that's why people want to do it. You could put Pep Guardiola at Tottenham, and players would want to go there because Pep's there. So it's very much down to the manager rather than, it's not always the club. And you've got to remember that Liverpool haven't won the title for many years before recently. So it takes time. You have to build things. And you have to be clever in the market. And you mentioned City there, and sorry to interrupt you, but Liverpool, to be fair, were very clever in the market as well, because Klopp was, I wouldn't say in a sticky period, but he wasn't finding things that easy. And they sold Coutinho. But when they sold Coutinho, they went and got a goalkeeper and a world-class central defender. So what they got in, actually, I remember them losing Coutinho and thinking, wow, that's quite a loss to them. But actually, they've gone on to strength to strength, and they've reinvested the Coutinho money back into the team. Yeah,
and fixed the spine of the team as well. That was the 2 weakest areas, wasn't it? The centre. They signed a world-class centre-back and a world-class goalkeeper, and it's something we have to do as well. And I understand, look, and I'm pretty calm about the Sancho deal, to be honest with you. I think it's going to happen. I'm going to be confident enough to say I think he'll be a United player before the end of August. And
it gets the point, though. It gets the point as well. Sorry, I'll just say, as for all what United are saying, is that it gets the point where United almost have to sign him now.
Yeah, but that's why I was going to come on to.
I mean, I've seen Kingsley Coman linked as a possible backup solution to Sancho and other ridiculous names. But, it gets to a point where well, obviously United are interested in the player. We know that as a fact. But if they were to walk away now, then, that's not really how big clubs operate. If Barcelona or Real Madrid want a player, they'll get the player. If Bayern Munich want a player, they'll get that player. You see it with City now. If they're really interested in somebody, or even probably Liverpool to a certain extent, they'll maybe Liverpool are not spending the 80-90 million, but if they want the player on that next bracket down, they'll get the player. So
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure United can actually sit there and walk away from it. I know they probably will be prepared to do that if things don't go their way and the window and time moves on. But it gets to the point where you're thinking, hang on a second, if United ever want to get back to that top table, then to get a young British talent like Sancho, or to make sounds that you want him and then walk away, wouldn't send the right message to supporters either.
Absolutely. That was the point I was going to make. Is that so? Someone on Twitter said to me the other day that why don't we wait till next summer? I think he's got a year left after that. And I said, you really think that when his price drops to 60, 70 million, that when you've got a whole host of clubs, Real Madrid, Barcelona, they'll all be in for him, that we're an attractive proposition? We have to be realistic. Although we are on an upward trajectory, we are still an attractive proposition. We can't guarantee Premier League titles or Champions Leagues right now. So we're the only team left in it because we're the only team willing and probably able to pay that fee. And something I do want to ask is, when you look at the way that other teams conduct their business, and I completely agree that this is a massive, massive deal. It's going to take time. There's so many different elements to it that need to be completed, and fans need to be patient. And I have no issue with that because I do think he's going to come. But why does it take United in general so long to complete transfers? Because you're seeing City, they've gone and wrapped up 2 players, relatively small fees, but done quick, 2 in the door. They want 5 overall, apparently. Apparently, they're now going to go and have a look at Koulibaly, which is going to be a phenomenal signing. And then you're looking at United, and we do one deal at a time. For me, I think we're possibly one of the slowest to react in the market out of some of the big clubs when it comes to negotiations. So what is that down to? Is that down to the fact that because you're Man United, you automatically get that United tax slapped onto the transfer fee? Or is it because simply we actually don't have interest in a lot of the players, and their agents or the clubs are doing that to entice more money or more interest, or whether the player just wants a pay increase?
It's interesting. I've known that United often get used as Manchester United being interested in X, Y, or Z, and then that player, remarkably gets a big move somewhere else or gets a new contract. I have no doubt that's happened in the past. But I remember things like Carlos Tevez, Dimitar Berbatov, some of these deals under David Gillam and Sir Alex Ferguson, you seem to rumble on for most of the summer. But that said, I do think that without Wan-Bissaka, I believe that could have been done 3 or 4 weeks earlier. Harry Maguire, that seemed to drag on last summer. But if they get these players in the end, then I don't think it really matters that much when they get them, as long as it's through the door. Now this year, it'd be nice to get them in, get a pre-season under their belts and get going as soon as possible. It'd be horrible if it wouldn't be horrible, that's the wrong word, but it would be slightly frustrating if the season started in September the 12th or whenever it was, and then Sancho wasn't a Manchester United player. I think that would be nice to get him, obviously, still, but I think if you're dragging on that long, you've got to ask why it hasn't been done before. And then you might ask the question that you touched upon earlier: are they doing it for sort of PR and dramatic effect? But if you only get one player in and it's Jadon Sancho, is that going to take United higher than 3rd place in the Premier League? And the answer there is no. There's still a lot of work to be done there. As we go back to the best thing about Manchester United's performance against yesterday evening was that it absolutely highlighted all the flaws and all the players that aren't good enough as squad members. And go back to it again, you look at City, you look at Liverpool, you look at other top teams in Europe who've won leagues and cups. You need a squad of players that can come in and, they might not be spectacular, but they're happy to be there and they'll perform at their highest level. And United just have a lot of, I think Manchester United in a squad of 25 or whatever have sort of 17 or 18 squad players, which is too many. I think we're massive.
I think honestly, sorry, go on, Tom, you're saying?
No, I just think that we've got too many sort of squad players, if that makes sense, and not of quality. I think it's starting to get there with your front three, Pogba and Bruno, and hopefully Sancho is added to Rashford, Martial, and Greenwood. But it takes time, and then you can have the ball and you can have as much attacking flair as you want, but if you've still got that sort of unpredictability and uncertainty in your back four, and it's going to make De Gea even more uncomfortable. There's an issue there. So can you really neglect the defence as well? It's tricky. It is tricky.
Defence for me is a massive point. Since the restart, that's been the area actually that I've been most concerned about. And remember, we've spoken twice now, and we have discussed the centre-back pairing. And since we had our discussion, it's opened my eyes up completely actually to Harry Maguire as a player. And I agree with your assessment. And your assessment was, obviously good Premier League player, but is he really a top world-class centre-back or one of the best in the world? Definitely not. And what you've seen is during the restart, he's made several mistakes, but also the partnership just isn't working with Lindelof. Lindelof, I think, reads the game really well. I think he's quite disrespected, but he's probably not a title-winning left back. A centre back. Sorry, he definitely is not. And
funny
when
player
you look at that
Lindelof, isn't he?
partnership,
Funny player Lindelof. Sorry, because for me, Lindelof goes through games, and you only kind of notice if he makes a mistake. He'll go through games and he'll have a good game, but you just won't see him.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? He's kind of like he's just in and out, isn't he? And then somebody else will do something really good. Someone will score a goal, or Greenwood will do some Bruno, and then no one ever mentions Lindelof. And then when he makes a mistake, everyone says, "Oh, look, he's there. He's made a mistake again." But actually, 8 or 9 times out of 10, and I think Gary Neville said it on commentary against Leicester. He said that Lindelof was the most reliable with the defenders, or certainly in that game.
I think
anyway.
he is. Yeah, I think he is. And that. So my view on this is going to be a funny one. My view on our centre back players are that I think Bailly cannot be relied on. He needs to go. I wouldn't even give him another season personally, because he's either brilliant or he's just a calamity. He scares the life out of me. You saw him when you played the Chelsea game. He's just too injury prone. It's such a shame because he actually has sort of the raw abilities to be a really good partner with Maguire Lindelof. I really like Tuanzebe, but we don't know what his injury record is going to be like next season. Fingers crossed he can turn up. And then you've got obviously the Maguire Lindelof partnership. I don't think Lindelof is as bad as people say. I actually think he's probably our best centre back. His big issue obviously is the whole aerial ball or under physical pressure. But as a player, I think that his injury record's brilliant. He's an excellent passer of the ball. He's a better passer actually than Maguire. He reads the game brilliantly. I don't think he's been dribble past once this season. So now you're seeing a lot of rumours that we are looking at centre back, which I'm happy about. I wasn't too upset we didn't go for Ake, but he probably would have been a nice signing because he can also play left back. But now you're seeing rumours of us being linked to Gabriel, and I believe we've met with his representative, not met with Lille. So have you seen anything on Gabriel, and have you heard anything in the pipeline that we're looking for a centre back?
First of all, I think that you mentioned central defenders there, and Lindelof, we've talked about. Maguire, we know what his faults are. Tuanzebe may be the answer alongside Maguire, but he's always injured. Bailly, similar, he's sort of reliable. Jones is in and out, not favoured, and has made too many errors over the last sort of 2 years. And Marcus Rojo is probably just not good enough. So we've named 5 or 6 central defenders there, and the trouble is, not one of them. We don't trust one of them. Not one of them has got what you'd say, a world-class attribute between them, and that's a worry as a Manchester United. For the Manchester United squad, because I don't like to go back to it, but Rio, Stam, Vidic, Pallister and Bruce maybe weren't world class, but the combination of them was fantastic, and we're not even getting a combination at the moment. And then you go to Chris Smalling, and you think of Chris Smalling and think, okay, might not be amazing playing the ball out from the back, but in the air he's probably better than Lindelof, and 1v1 he's quicker and stronger than Maguire. So from a financial point of view, and we go back to that horrible word of 2 words of football business, that is what Manchester United are. Now, unless Solskjaer's talking Smalling up on his return from Roma because he knows he's going to get more money from him and he's going to sell him, then that may be the case. But it sounds, if you take his press conference comments on board, like he's going to reintegrate him back into the team. And, he's reliable in terms of he's very rarely injured. And as again I say, he's quicker and he's better in the air than Lindelof. He's quicker than both of Maguire and Lindelof and Maguire. So will that save United some money? Because we talked about Grealish and a midfielder before. They're not going to sign Jadon Sancho, a midfielder and a central defender. I just don't think they're going to do that. And I think that when Solskjaer submitted his list of players that he wanted earlier in the season, I doubt at that point, even though United weren't in great form, I doubt that a central defender was high on the list because it was still quite early on in the season. And I think with the signing of Maguire and Wan-Bissaka at right back, I think that maybe privately, and this is just me saying this now, I don't know this, but I think that they thought that the defence was perhaps sewn up and they could concentrate on other areas of the team. That said, a good organisation or a good manager adjusts with things and is able to be flexible. And I think now, if you've got a toss-up between, yes, get Sancho in, but if you've got a toss-up between a midfielder or a central defender, what's more pressing for United? If Pogba stays, I'd forget completely about the midfield and spend the money we've got on somebody like Gabriel, who you mentioned there. And no, I haven't seen a lot of, so I won't pretend I have. But I have heard good things about him in terms of his physique, his stature, and his pace. He can play a little bit as well. So from what I hear, and I've not watched YouTube clips of him, but from what I've heard from people that work over there, they've said he would strengthen defence. So we'll have to see. But I think it's coming to a point where I can't see United signing 3 players. So does Solskjaer think that by bringing Smalling back in, that can help the defence and they can challenge or get near to a trophy, or does he not believe that? Really believe that? Is he going to sell Smalling? And is he going to bring a central defender in instead of a midfielder? Because I think that the midfield area is important, but I think that if Pogba stays with Fred, Matic, Bruno, McTominay, and maybe one other, you can probably get away with that. And it's so horrible to say that because it's Manchester United, but again, it's that football business. And I think that if they can save somebody in the defence with Smalling, they'll stick with that and they'll go and get a midfielder. But if they don't think that's going to happen, they'll go and get a central defender. So I guess what I'm saying is either one or the other. It'll be Sancho plus either a midfielder or a defender.
See, that for me, that represents probably a all summer, I would say.
That's just me. That's just me speaking out loud.
No, absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen, because when have United gone and bought more than 3-4 players years ago? And that's when we won in the Champions League. So look, the way I see it is that with Chris Smalling, I love Chris Smalling. I think he's got a great attitude. He's an excellent pro. He had 1 or 2 very good seasons under LVG. I think he's a very good defender. I think he's probably the best defender out of the defenders we have. But when you're looking at the way that we're passing the ball out the back, which I'm not really a massive fan of either, because it's quite clear that when we've played teams that have pressed us high up the pitch, we just look very lax and very shaky at the back. But for me, it represents, I suppose 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, because you're bringing back a defender. I don't think Ollie wants to keep him because he just can't play out the back. And if he can't do that, I don't see for me personally, when you see we're trying to play out the back, that's probably his weakest aspect of his game. And it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. He looks happy in Italy. He's suited to Italian football. He's probably been one of the best central defenders in the whole of the league there. So I'd be saying to him, I'd be allowing him to go and play, go and enjoy your football again. He's obviously happy where he is. Not to come back, because I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, bring him back," but it's like Sanchez as well. Sanchez looks happy where he was. He was playing some of his best football for years. Sometimes it just works out better for all parties. Lukaku's another example, and that's how I'd approach it with Chris Smalling. But for me, I agree with you. I thought that we'd be okay in defence as the season went on, but as we've seen, it's just not working. And if we don't wrap up 3 players, midfielder, right winger, and central defender, that's a poor window for me. You don't challenge without all 3, in my opinion. And I agree with what you're saying, though, that you can't really trust that we are going to go and spend more. But let's talk about some of the exits. So I know we've spoken quite a lot about Diogo Dalot, and it looks like he's off. And why is he not playing? Is there something behind the scenes? Is it his injury record? Is it his commitment in training? Or it's just simply that Ollie doesn't fancy him? Because when I'm looking at our wing-back options, I think we need another left-back. I like the look of Alex Telles, who plays at Porto, someone that offers more of an attacking threat, someone with a better end product. I mean, Telles has got 16 goals and 11 assists. It's so impressive. He can take free kicks, penalties. He's a real threat, very much in the Andy Robertson mould. We've seen when Luke Shaw hasn't played, the impact it's actually had on our system. And I will admit that Shaw's become quite an integral system, those overlapping runs, sort of pulling the right back out wide and allowing Rashford to take more of an inside position has been really, really impressive. And they're building a nice understanding. But as much as I do like Brandon Williams, I don't like a right-footed left back. And I think his future perhaps is understudy to to Wan-Bissaka, and then you've got Timothy Fosu-Mensah, who's come out of nowhere, and I don't know, he hasn't played for 3 years, but he's now found himself back in the starting 11, and he's defended well, to be fair to him, but doesn't offer much going forward. So where are you sitting on this Dalot sort of situation? And is it because you've got Ethan Laird waiting in the academy, or is it just simply because Solskjaer doesn't like him? And are our backup options, I suppose, good enough in the modern game where fullbacks are expected to attack and defend?
I think you made a good point, actually, at the beginning. I think it's always, when you're talking about signings at Manchester United, and again, that football business, a couple of words, apologise for using again, but, where these players aren't going to get what the wages Manchester United give. Phil Jones probably won't leave Manchester United and be on what he's on now. Jesse Lingard probably won't be on if he leaves this summer, and so on and so forth. In terms of Dalot, he wasn't a Solskjaer signing, so if Solskjaer's trying to build his own team and players and way of playing, he's not his man. So he's, from his point of view, if you're speaking to the board of Ed Woodward or the player himself, he can say, look, great, you've done okay when you've come in, but I didn't sign you, and it's probably best if you move on for that. In terms of left back, I think United don't need a left back. I think that I understand what you're saying about right-footed left back with Williams, but I think, again, how important is a left back in terms of, you compare it to the central defence or central midfield or the right wing or the right forward, whatever, Sancho, however where you want to play him. There are more pressing matters, and you can't get everything you want in 1, 2, or even 3 windows sometimes. So I think it's Williams and Shaw for left back. If Dalot goes, you mentioned Laird and Wan-Bissaka. So I think that it starts to take some kind of shape with Laird, perhaps replacing Dalot as the backup for Wan-Bissaka. Your 4 central defenders will probably Maguire, Lindelof, Tuanzebe or Bailly, and then the returning Smalling, and your left backs, you're probably looking at Luke Shaw and Brandon Williams, of course. Defensive midfield position, you've probably got Fred, McTominay and Matic. Or Matic, your first choice of defensive midfielder, which means probably Pereira could be sold. And then in front of that, you've got Pogba and Bruno, which means I think Lingard is obviously in the departure lounge if he's not already on his way somewhere after the Europa League. So that kind of caters for that, really. And then you can see there's kind of a structure and a spine almost in De Gea, Maguire, Matic, Pogba, Bruno, and then you've got obviously Rashford, Martial, Dan James is part of the supporting cast. We know that Mason Greenwood, and then if Sancho comes in, you've got him. So the squad is starting to, you can see what direction they're taking it, and that's why I just think right back to lose Dalot wouldn't be a massive blow. And I think that in terms of the left side, I think Luke Shaw and Williams for now have that pretty much sewn up. It's certainly, in my opinion, not a defensive priority. Dalot's a strange one because he's all right going forward, isn't he? But he's not Wan-Bissaka in the defensive third. He seems to be positionally out of place, and I can't think of his record in terms of tackling and making things difficult for the winger. I always, I remember the game at PSG away where he had the shot for the penalty last season in the Champions League. That's my memory of Dalot, and again that was in an attacking position. So although he's been bought to come in as a right back, I can't really remember any great defensive performances from him. So I'm not sure that it would be too much of a loss from that point of view if he did go. Yeah,
it's a funny one. I just
it just don't see him playing, does he? Where does he play? I mean, if you look at when they go 3 centre halves sometimes now, this is before Smalling came back. You'd go Lindelof, Maguire. Even Shaw played as the third central defender, didn't he? And then Williams as your left wing back, and then obviously Wan-Bissaka on the right. It's not a case of and if Luke Shaw's if he plays for at the back, and Luke Shaw's got that sewn up, and something happens to Wan-Bissaka, then you can stick Williams in there, can't you? So I just think the full-back area is not a priority, and I think we're probably okay there. I'd be surprised if they did sign somebody. Very surprised.
Oh, yeah, I'm just puzzled. I mean, like I was saying. Last point, I know we've got to wrap up, but with Dalot, some people think he's incredible, which is not the case, but then other people think he's shocking, which again is not the case. And you see that a lot with the United fan base, that there's very few people that sit in the middle, and it's quite objective. He's either amazing or he's terrible, and I think Dalot is one of those players. What is positive though is he does have a resale value. I now seen a few reports. I know Jose Mourinho apparently is interested in him, and he used to play him. Well, he's a Jose signing, isn't he?
I just can't see him playing. I just can't see him playing 25 Premier League games for somebody.
He's made of glass. That's the problem. Apparently he's injured again, and I think for me as well, I don't think he knows his best position. He would actually excel massively, I think, in a Conte 3 at the back, playing as a wing back, because again, his attacking ability was probably much better than his defensive. But what's puzzling me, and I'm not going to say Ollie's treated him badly, because that's annoying me as well. There's this weird agenda and narrative that's coming on Twitter the last couple of days where Ollie doesn't actually manage youth properly, and it's anything to really hit the manager with a stick, isn't it? But I think Ollie has managed the youth very well. But what I don't understand is someone like Fosu Mensah, who, again, I think he was always destined to be a much better defensive midfielder. I would have loved him to have seen him learning off Matic and perhaps taking that position, because he's got that energy. But I've never seen him as a fullback. I never understood it when he went to Palace to play there, and Fulham, I believe.
Yeah, I think we've seen.
I think that's ruined him.
Yeah, I think we've seen in the last couple of games, Fosu Mensah. Somebody said that to me. I had a disagreement with somebody a couple of years ago, surprise on Twitter, with a guy who said we may as well stick Fosu Mensah in that defensive midfield position, and I said he's not good enough with the ball, and I think we've seen that yesterday, and in the previous game. He's very athletic. He's okay one-on-one. He's a decent defender, but I don't think we're looking at a Manchester United player, to be honest, and that might seem harsh given that he's been away on loan and not really come through. But I think that he was one of the ones I was disappointed with, actually, because I wasn't expecting, I wasn't putting realistic expectations on him. But I just looked at him last night and thought, I don't really think you've got a future at the club, which is disappointing because he did break onto the scene. But it happens. Other defenders, probably with more ability, have been moved on as well, and it's just one of those things. But I just don't see him getting into that United side unless, Solskjaer feels that Laird isn't ready and he goes with Timothy Fosu Mensah as the backup to Wan-Bissaka. But I'd be surprised, really. I wouldn't fill me with much confidence because I'm not sure there's not many games you could trust him in, really. I don't think, certainly defensively. And as I say, in the final third, he's not great.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say about Chong's performance last night? And another one, Juan Mata, because we saw Chong play left back, and it was quite interesting. I'm not going to get carried away like everyone else, because first it was Lask, and two, he looked decent. There's definitely attributes there. My thing with Chong is I can't really see what way it goes. I've watched him in the academy; he's been decent, and when I've watched him play for us, I've never really been impressed. He seems a bit too one-dimensional to be a top winger. I know it's very early days. He's got to play regularly, and I think
he needs a move, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he needs a move. Yeah, the loan. There's talk of Werder Bremen and a couple of other clubs that are apparently in for him. He needs a loan move. I watched the Ukrainian and Russian team at Old Trafford, and he came off in the second half. And I was sat in the South stand, or the Sir Bobby Charlton stand, and he came off. And while the game was going on, I watched him walk around the pitch, because obviously they've got to come off the pitch at the where they are.
Yeah.
So he was at the far side opposite Solskjaer, and I watched him walk around the side of the pitch, and the fans stood up and applauded him as he walked around, and he didn't have a good game. He was terrible. And I just looked at his body language, and I just thought he looked really disappointed in himself and how he played. And I do wonder, a bit like Fosu Mensah, if he's good enough to make the grade and be a top sort of Manchester United player, because from what I hear about him, he's a different sort of background and personality to Gomez, very well liked. I'm not saying Gomez isn't well liked, but Chong certainly wouldn't upset the apple cart in terms of agitating for a move. And I just feel that it's make or break now for him. He has to go away. He has to perform.
Yeah, he has to play regularly.
And regularly. And he's just desperate for it. If ever a player in the squad's desperate for a loan move, I think for his own career, even if he ends up away from United, which is likely, I think it's
I
Tom.
completely
He really
agree.
needs to. He needs it big time.
Absolutely, Tom. And that's us done now. Thank you very much for coming on. And this is a last question. So where do you see United finishing next season, and what represents a successful season next year? So I'm going to say third again, because I don't see us finishing top two.
Yeah.
We have to be within touching distance, let's say within sort of 10 points by March, I'd say, off the top. And I think we have to win a domestic trophy, and we have to get to the quarterfinals or at least out the group in the Champions League. It's crazy we're talking about Man United like this, but these are the times, sadly, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think United to narrow the point difference on City and Liverpool. I don't see them breaking into the top two, and a domestic trophy would be fantastic, but it'll be difficult again because I don't think that City will be, as I say, poor. I don't know how many games they'll have to do, 4 or 5 Premier League games. I can't see them losing 4 or 5 Premier League games again. Unless something drastically goes wrong. You expect them to react, don't you? You expect them to push Liverpool a bit harder. And as we said at the beginning of the podcast, they've spent money already. So there's City there, but also there's teams like Everton and Ancelotti. Will he get what he wants in the transfer market? And if he does, I expect them to be a lot better. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be third, but they'll certainly, around the sort of Wolves area, you expect them to push on. Mourinho, has he got one last season or a couple of last seasons in him and push Tottenham on again? So all these teams that are below us are going to improve and get better. So it's vital United hit that transfer market really and do sign Sancho and at least one other player that aids them, because they're going to need it. So next season, I think if United finish third next season and narrow the points difference between themselves, City and Liverpool, that would be very good. And then obviously a trophy would be nice. But I think it'll be difficult because I fear that the players that United need for them to make that sort of close the gap won't all come this transfer window. We might have to wait another 12 months.
Absolutely. Well said, Tom. And thank you very much for joining me again. It's always a pleasure, and hope to speak to you soon, mate.
Anytime, mate. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Bye.